Jon Jones is well past his prime. That's what Khabib said in a recent interview. And Khabib was definitely being sincere within the interview. I mean, he understood when he called Jon Jones the greatest of all time, he understood that that was included in front of him. When Khabib was breaking down skill sets and who's brought the most tremendous, dynamic, diverse skill set to the octagon, he understood that saying that that was Jon Jones was replacing himself. Khabib just went further. And Khabib said, but that's not what the legacy will be. I'd rather have my legacy than Jon's skills. I think, well, that's an interesting concept. What are we talking about here? Well, Khabib explained. Khabib said, legacy is how your kids will look at you. What things happen from your career that you will have to lie about or explain or rework when you're explaining it to your kids, when they get old enough and they find Google and the internet and they come and ask you what happened here? How many things do you have to look down or rework or say that was a misunderstanding? Versus a guy who, it wouldn't matter what the headline or where it came from, it's all going to be positive, and he would never have to tell his kids a different story. This is how Khabib broke this down. He said that's the difference in legacy. He compared legacy with accomplishments. Khabib said that he believes that he will have the better legacy, but he will admit that nobody has had the accomplishments of Jon Jones. Khabib went further to say that Jon is well past his prime. Now, I appreciated this conversation. And if anybody has the right to an opinion on that, it would be Khabib. And Khabib has now seen this business from both sides. He was the world champion inside the cage. He is training world champions from outside the cage. But is Jon past his prime? And I suppose I'd have to respond with this. We have no evidence of that. There is absolutely no evidence that Jon is past his prime. I get that he should be. I get that very few athletes can take breaks and take years off and not train. Jon Jones is in a situation where I don't believe any of you could name the gym that he trains at. Any of you. No matter how big of a fan you are, I don't believe you can produce the name of the gym. I don't believe any of you, no matter how big of a fan you are, could produce the name of Jon's current head coach. And I don't believe that any of you could tell me on a regular basis who Jon's current workout partners are. And I will fully admit, for anybody else in a situation that's in the spotlight that was the champion, that lost the championship without even being punched, I mean, right, it's a very unique situation. And for anybody else, it would seem as though they're out of their prime, not to mention the years are going by. And all of a sudden, you go from the youngest champion of the world to, if you were to reclaim the championship, you would be a top 4 oldest champions of all time, and that's right off the top of my head. And you would assume that that person is digressing. I'm just here to remind you, or even to challenge you. With what evidence do you make that statement? Jon, November of last year, going into his fight at Madison Square Garden with Stipe. Things weren't different at that time. I could have challenged you right then and said, tell me the name of the gym that Jon is preparing at. You wouldn't have been able to do it. I could have said, who does Jon identify as his current head coach? You would not have been able to do it. I could have asked you who are Jon's training partners, and a few of you smart marks would have brought in like Gable Steveson and Gordon Ryan because those are guys that Jon flew into camp, but that's not what a teammate is. That's a glorified paid appearance. And while doing things seemingly wrong and seemingly against the grain that has never in history held up for anybody else, if you go and look at Jon and Stipe's fight, there was nothing remotely competitive about it. In fact, in some ways, it was the most vicious and most effective Jon Jones that we've ever seen. So with what piece of evidence do we state that Jon is well past his prime? Usually, that's a dissent. And in football and baseball and a guy's numbers, and they start changing, but then he works in a story about, oh, my shoulder's out. So now it comes back into a little bit of a comeback story, and you re-sign him and you put him on a special deal. He spends more time on the bench. I mean, generally that's how it works. In MMA, you find out right now. Like for fighters, there's never a time that they're done with this sport. But the fighter will get in the cage one night and find out this sport is done with him, and it never comes back. Jon didn't lose a single round in that fight. Not even close. Jon didn't lose an aspect. I mean, he wasn't out-wrestled, for example. He wasn't out-kicked, for example. He wasn't out-paced. He wasn't out-strategized. He wasn't out-boxed. He won every single one of those categories running away. And if you think that Jon is too old for it, statistically, you might be right. But again, if I was to go back to his most recent contest, I believe Jon is now 37. Is that right, guys? 36, 37, 38. He's 38. Stipe was 41 at the time of that fight. I mean, not for nothing. We wouldn't be able to just look at the numbers and say Jon is well past his prime and not say that about Stipe. But that's never been said about Stipe. The way Stipe fights and the style that he fights look perfectly normal, and that was never called into question. So with what evidence do we come to the conclusion that Jon Jones is well past his prime? And it's not as though we're hearing stories and we're getting clips and feeds of things outside of the ring that are unusual to Jon's previous career. Even when you could tell me the name of the gym he was at, he never went. Even when you could tell me who his head coach was, the coach never had a hold of him. Even when you could tell me who his workout partners were, he didn't see them but 3 days a week. So what's different now? What has changed? Jon Jones is past his prime. Great. Convince me. Tell me with what evidence you come to that conclusion.